During the 12th century, the foundations for the Magna Carta were laid as England underwent significant political and social transformations. The Norman kings, beginning with William the Conqueror in 1066, centralized power, reducing the autonomy of local lords and imposing strict feudal laws. This centralization created a system where the king held ultimate authority over land and justice, which began to strain relations with the barons. The reigns of William Rufus, Henry I, and Henry II saw the introduction of administrative reforms and the expansion of royal authority, often at the expense of traditional baronial privileges. Henry II's efforts to strengthen royal courts and impose a uniform system of justice, while effective, also sparked resistance among the barons who saw their own influence over local governance diminish. These tensions were compounded by increasing taxation to fund military campaigns such as those in France. Although these measures contributed to a more centralized and efficient kingdom, they sowed the seeds of discontent among the nobility, who felt their traditional rights and powers were being eroded. This growing frustration would later coalesce into demands for a charter limiting royal authority. The reign of King John from 1199 to 1216 was marked by conflict, mismanagement, and widespread dissatisfaction among the nobility, clergy, and common people. John inherited a kingdom already burdened by the cost of his brother Richard the Lionheart's crusades and ransom, and he struggled to maintain control over the extensive Angevin Empire. His early reign was defined by a series of military defeats, most notably the loss of Normandy in 1204 to the French king Philip II, which dealt a severe blow to English prestige and John's credibility as a leader. To fund his attempts to regain these territories, John imposed heavy taxes and scutage, a payment made in lieu of military service which alienated the barons. His methods of governance, often characterized by arbitrary justice, harsh penalties, and exploitation of feudal customs, further deepened resentment. John's relationship with the church also deteriorated, particularly after he rejected Pope Innocent III's nominee for Archbishop of Canterbury, Stephen Langton. This dispute led to England being placed under interdict in 1208 and John's excommunication in 1209, undermining his authority. While John eventually reconciled with the church in 1213, his reputation had suffered irreparable damage. His defeat at the Battle of Bouvines in 1214, a failed attempt to reclaim lost territories in France, was a critical turning point that emboldened the barons. Facing mounting opposition and an organized rebellion, John was forced to negotiate, culminating in the sealing of the Magna Carta in 1215 at Runnymede. Despite agreeing to the charter, John sought its annulment by the Pope, reigniting conflict and plunging the kingdom into the First Barons' War, which continued until his death in 1216. In 1214, King John faced a critical moment in his reign with the disastrous failure of his military campaign in France. Determined to reclaim the territories lost earlier in his rule, particularly Normandy, John launched an expensive and ambitious campaign to confront King Philip II of France. This effort culminated in the Battle of Bouvines, where John's allies, led by Emperor Otto IV and a coalition of European forces, were decisively defeated by Philip's army. The defeat shattered John's hopes of regaining his continental holdings and further weakened his standing among the English barons. The campaign had been financed through heavy taxation and scutage, which had already caused widespread resentment. The failure of 1214 not only drained the royal treasury, but also solidified opposition to John's rule, pushing the barons closer to rebellion and setting the stage for the confrontation that would lead to the Magna Carta the following year. In the spring of 1215, tensions between King John and the English barons reached a breaking point. Frustrated by years of heavy taxation, failed military campaigns, and perceived abuses of royal authority, the barons organized to demand reforms. They presented John with a list of grievances, insisting on limitations to his power and greater recognition of their rights. John attempted to delay and negotiate, seeking to divide the barons and maintain his authority. However, the barons gained significant leverage when they seized London in May, a strategic and symbolic victory that placed them in a position of strength. Facing growing pressure and the risk of losing his throne, John was forced to enter into negotiations, which eventually led to the historic meeting at Runnymede in June. The events of the spring set the stage for the creation of the Magna Carta, a document that would become a cornerstone of constitutional governance. On June 15, 1215, King John met with a group of rebel barons at Runnymede, a meadow by the River Thames, to seal what would become known as the Magna Carta. This meeting was the culmination of escalating tensions between the king and his barons, who had grown increasingly disillusioned with John's arbitrary rule, military failures, and excessive taxation. Under immense pressure and with little choice, John agreed to the demands laid out in the Charter, which sought to limit royal power and safeguard certain feudal rights. The Magna Carta addressed issues such as protection from unlawful imprisonment, access to swift justice, and constraints on taxation without baronial consent. Although John's acceptance of the Charter was seen as a significant concession, it was more a strategic move to buy time, as he had no intention of adhering to its terms. Nonetheless, the sealing of the Magna Carta marked a pivotal moment in the history of governance and law, laying the groundwork for principles that would endure for centuries. In August 1215, Pope Innocent III issued a papal bull annulling the Magna Carta, declaring it invalid and unenforceable. The Pope sided with King John, arguing that the Charter had been agreed upon under duress and violated John's royal prerogatives. This act reinforced John's belief that he could disregard the commitments he had made at Runnymede and reassert his authority over the rebellious barons. The annulment of the Magna Carta reignited hostilities, as the barons saw this as a betrayal of the agreements meant to protect their rights. Their discontent led to the outbreak of the First Barons' War, a civil conflict that pitted the king and his loyalists against the rebel barons, who sought to enforce the terms of the Charter and limit royal power. The Pope's intervention deepened the political crisis and further weakened John's already precarious position. In 1216, the First Barons' War continued to rage, with King John facing mounting opposition from the rebel barons, who had invited Prince Louis of France to claim the English throne. Louis landed in England with a sizable force and captured significant territory, including London, further undermining John's authority. However, John's death in October 1216, likely from dysentery, altered the course of events. His 9-year-old son, Henry III, was proclaimed king, and a regency council led by William Marshal, Earl of Pembroke, took control of the kingdom. To secure peace and rally support for the young king, the regents reissued a revised version of the Magna Carta in November 1216. This version omitted some of the more controversial clauses, such as those limiting royal control over taxation in the church, to make it more acceptable. In 1217, the conflict gradually subsided as Marshal secured a series of military victories against Louis and the rebel forces. The Treaty of Lambeth, signed later that year, officially ended the war, with Louis renouncing his claim to the throne in exchange for compensation. Another revised version of the Magna Carta was issued in 1217, further solidifying its role as a foundational document for English governance. In 1225, during the reign of King Henry III, a final version of the Magna Carta was issued, marking a significant moment in its evolution. At the age of 13, Henry was now officially ruling, though his power remained largely in the hands of his regents. In exchange for a grant of new taxation to fund his government, Henry agreed to reissue the Magna Carta, confirming its terms and making it part of the law of the land. This version was more streamlined than earlier editions, with some of the more contentious clauses removed or modified. It was reissued under royal authority, ensuring its continued relevance, but it also reflected the changing political dynamics as the barons and the king sought a more stable relationship. The 1225 version of the Magna Carta became a key part of English constitutional law, remaining in effect until the 17th century and inspiring later legal documents, including the English Bill of Rights and the American Constitution. The Magna Carta's legacy and influence have been profound, shaping the development of constitutional law and the concept of individual rights over centuries. Initially, its impact was felt in England, where it established the principle that the monarchy was not above the law. Although King John's successors were often reluctant to fully uphold its provisions, the Magna Carta became a symbol of resistance against arbitrary royal power. In the 13th and 14th centuries, its clauses were frequently invoked by barons seeking to protect their rights, and it played a role in the development of parliamentary traditions. During the 17th century, the Magna Carta's influence grew as English political thinkers and figures, particularly during the English Civil War, used it to challenge the monarchy's power and demand greater parliamentary control. Its ideas about due process, trial by jury, and limits on taxation without representation resonated with those advocating for constitutional reforms. The Magna Carta also had a profound impact on the American colonies, inspiring the Founding Fathers. The document's emphasis on individual rights and the rule of law was evident in the drafting of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, particularly the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, which echoed its provisions on due process and fair trial. Internationally, the Magna Carta became a symbol of freedom and justice, influencing legal systems and democratic movements around the world. Its principles laid the groundwork for the modern ideas of human rights, constitutional law, and the checks and balances that define democratic governance.